Guys, this right here is Joshua Brown. He is Joshua Brown Wellness here on Instagram. Go check him out. Writes a lot of interesting things about health and more recently about freedom and the things that you're doing there. You've been warned. All I got to say. Don't blame me if you get there and you kind of go, Joshua. No, you do some great work, man. You're putting it out there, but you've been a big fan of my work. You've been following me for a little while, and I thought, okay, what you got, Joshua? You want to come on the show? And he said, well, have you ever talked about pornography addiction on your show before? And I said, actually, no. Like, I would love to kind of get into the details of like the impact of that on your mental health, obviously on relationships and society in general. So, woo, we're taking on a big boy today. Welcome, man.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Jimmy. I have been following you for a long time, and I appreciate you're always you're willing to say your opinion, even when it's not popular. And I really, really appreciate that. We need many more people like that. And so, with exactly what's happening recently, a few of us have felt like we had to speak up, and also, pornography is not a very easy topic to talk about. So,
look, it's taboo to talk about anything related to sex in our society. It just is. And I don't understand why. It's a very natural human instinct to want it. It's
primary drive.
Yeah, it's built within us just as much as hunger for food and thirst for water. That drive for sex and wanting that pleasure that comes from that and all the things that happen with appropriate sex, that's not taboo to me. That's just human. That's just being a human being. So where do we go off the rails? Why do people turn to, let's just tell it what it is, fake forms of sex?
I think honestly, it's part of it is what you just said. We don't talk about it. So parents leave their kids to figure it out. And if you leave your kids to figure it out, what do they find? Like for myself, 13 years old, I found pornography. And so your exposure to, like, the average age of exposure is 9 years old to hardcore pornography. And so you can't say that doesn't warp someone's view of what is supposed to be like the most tight form of intimacy between two people. And so, I think we don't talk about it. Like, what do we have problems with in society? We have problems with sexuality. We have problems with money. Those are two things we don't talk about.
Well, and we also have problems with relationships and intimacy. The old stereotype of women are the feely guys, and the guys are just bunga. Like, I think we have so put people in a box that we labeled people that don't fit those boxes as something other than what they are. And I think that's what drives a lot to pornography, for example. To me, it's just become this one big shit show of you're not allowed to, so therefore I'm gonna. Like, that's kind of where we are. Don't. But then I'm going to, like, when I was growing up, I'm about 30 this year. I think I'm a little older. It was Playboy magazine and Penthouse, and they were always behind like black papers. You couldn't see anything in the front, blah, blah, blah. But like, that would be the only way you would have access. The kids these days, you just literally all you have to do is a Google search, naked woman, naked man, show me boobs. Do anything like that in an image search, and you can literally pop it up on your screen instantly.
Yeah, and it's so, like, I can only talk about like how it started myself, but like one of the primary drivers is that it's totally anonymous. You're in complete control. You have like this illusion of intimacy, like, and there's just unending novelty. Like, you will never ever get to the end of new people, new whatever, right? And so it like hits your brain in so many different ways. I know we said we'd talk about like a little bit of like dopamine. Like one thing about drugs is that they always force a dopamine hit.
Yes.
Well, the same thing with pornography. You're forcing a dopamine hit every time, and over time, like your normal changes. So you need that to function normally.
Is it different kind? Is it more, what does it take to give you that dopamine hit?
Um, well, I think it's just like, I think so. Like the first reaction for most people, I think, when they see this stuff is like they're kind of a little bit disgusted, but they're also intrigued. And over time, that disgust or that like this isn't right goes away, and you start to pursue whatever is your unique, like whatever hits your buttons, right? And it's kind of like this beast that you're never satisfied with the level you're at. It's like you're gonna, if you're a 20-year if you've looked at porn for 20 years, what you're looking at now looks nothing like what you first saw, and it's this downward spiral. It becomes like a shame guilt cycle. I looked at the definition of an addiction a long time ago, and it's actually it doesn't matter how long that cycle is. If you find yourself unable to break that cycle, you're addicted. So your cycle could be 2 or 3 months where you can like force yourself and willpower yourself to not look at something or not do something or not get drunk, whatever, you know what I mean? But when you finally cave, and if you were honest with yourself and you'd look back and say, about every 2 to 3 months, I can no longer cope with what I have. So like I wrote down when I was thinking about this interview that a coping mechanism is kind of like a fancy word for addiction a lot of times, not always. And so I was like, what your coping mechanism, it can be a good positive thing and it cannot be. So for myself, I found pornography at a young age, and slowly over time it became a coping mechanism for me. And like there's a lot surrounding that, but like, yeah.
Well, and I mean, I guess type of pornography is single guy down on his luck, can't find a girl, and it's kind of sad and blah blah blah. But that's not true. Like that is obviously somebody who would be into that. But you're seeing married men, people in a happy, seemingly, relationship with another person, and yet they're into it. What's going on with those people?
Well, again, I'll speak only for myself, but so like pornography, I just have a stat here, increases marital infidelity rate more than 300%. So that's insane. Like that's if you're dating someone, you that's like a question to ask them. 56% of American divorces involve one party having an obsessive interest in pornographic websites. So
wow. That's significant, 56%.
So like they have obsessive interest in quotes, right? So yeah. we could also put addicted in there.
I would also probably precursor to the infidelity you were talking about.
So like for myself, I had this struggle of where I was white knuckling at willpower, and my cycle was longer, but it was still there. And I'd been married for, now I'm doing math in my head. I should have done this beforehand.
Getting in trouble, brother. Delayed married.
So I was like 13 years old. It wasn't until I was in my late 20s before I started to have victory against this. And so for myself, it was, my brother, this is the whole beliefs idea of how to start to dismantle your false beliefs around something, is my brother just said to me, Josh, you still believe it's worth it? And I was like, no, I don't. And it kind of gave him crap, right? But I went home and I thought about that, and I was like, that's absolutely true. If you keep doing something, it's because you believe that it's worth it. It's solving a problem for you.
Or you're still getting that dopamine hit that you think you need from that. and you get that release. And look, once you start something like porn, but it doesn't apply to porn. I know you're a ketogenic carnivore kind of. Well, once you start eating carbohydrates, same thing. I mean, we could go down the list. Once you drink a little bit of alcohol, have a little bit of drugs, when you have a taste of it, it feeds into wanting more of whatever that thing is, and it definitely applies to pornography.
Yeah, and so like for myself, I catch myself exactly what you're saying. Like, I find I have to watch myself with carbohydrates, and especially like highly refined carbohydrates, because they absolutely change. They have a brain state changing effect on you, and so for myself, I had to start questioning my beliefs around like, well, is this affecting my marriage?
Yeah.
Well, absolutely it is, because you're
How could it not? Like, literally, you're substituting intimacy with a stranger you're looking at on a video screen.
well, and exactly. And
Let me finish the thought. For a real woman who's literally within proximity, and all you have to do is say, hey, you wanna, unless you have some marital strife that's preventing that.
well, and the pornography causes that marital strife.
Yes.
So yeah.
Marital strife, which then is withholding sex from one another, then the other one goes, well, I'm not getting any, so I have to figure something out because I have this primal need, as we talked about at the beginning, to have sex. So yeah, this is why I think it's so imperative. This is part of how you get out of it in a healthy relationship, is these two got to talk a lot and communicate a lot more and express desires and express needs. Because if you don't put it out there out loud, that's when the contention starts, and that's when one turns to porn.
Real Good Foods is one of the fastest growing frozen food companies in the U.S. Everything they make is nutrient dense, high in protein, low in carbs, and made from real food ingredients. They make food for every occasion: breakfast sandwiches, poppers, enchiladas, entrees, and pizza. So whether you're on a keto diet, trying to cut back on your carbs, or just trying to eat healthier, they make super convenient and tasty options. RealGoodFoods.com and @RealGoodFoods on social media.
Yeah, and so like for myself, I really had to dismantle some of the things. Like, it was affecting my marriage, even though I was telling myself it wasn't. It keeps your partner guessing, because like there's a normal cycle of like desire for men, like, and women too, like, and when you're not in that normal cycle, so like every 3 to 4 days a guy kind of wants to get laid, right? So
some people might be a little more than that, brother, but
that's average. That's average, right?
okay, we'll go with 3 or 4 days. But I promise you, there's guys that
oh yeah,
a lot faster.
I have friends that it's every day, and I'm like, holy, your wife is a
Look, carnivore makes your libido go crazy, man. Like I've been at this a little while eating carnivore, and I mean, it's intense.
yeah, you have to direct that energy to something else.
Now you know why I do 4 podcasts, and I do this crazy challenge I'm doing. I got some of that energy out somewhere, man.
But so like, so you have like, everyone's gonna have their own like kind of cycle, and when you have pornography in the mix, your partner is just always guessing, because it's not normal. It's always erratic. Like, guys start having like, I never had any issues with what you call it, ED or anything like that, but lots of guys, like there's guys in their teens now that have erectile dysfunction, because they are so in an alternate reality that they can't even relate to a real person. And like, so I just find it, so because I've gone through it, I feel like I can talk about it a little bit more, but like, and I'm willing to, because if this helps one person, if one person can start to dismantle like the false beliefs around pornography, or like maybe they can apply it to any other thing they're struggling with. But like, I went through, sorry, I'm kind of jumping around here. I was having victory with applying this new belief system. And then I actually went through a program called the Conquer series. and it's geared towards men. It's actually a church program, but it talks a lot about like the brain science, neuroscience behind pornography, and that kind of like solidified a lot of what I was going through.
Yeah.
And then this was actually really important. I had one guy in that group that I became good friends with, and one of the things they talk about in that Conquer series is you need to have one guy or one like
accountability.
Well, yeah, and one guy that you've told everything to.
Yes.
So like your most shameful thing.
Partners that knows all your secrets so that they can hold you accountable.
And like you tell them the thing you're the most ashamed of.
Yeah.
And that is a huge risk. And it's also one of the most freeing things ever.
Look, I think a lot of this subject of pornography is secrecy of it and shame of it. You know, and a lot of that is our Judeo-Christian kind of background in Northern Hemisphere, Westernized society here in America. And I know you're in Canada. It's very pervasive, that in the culture, although it's becoming less pervasive, but still traditionally very pervasive. And so maybe that's what people feel the shame. Although, quite frankly, I know a lot of people, they look at porn and they're not ashamed at all. They feel like it gives them a little zest in their own sex life with their partner. And so what's wrong with that if that's the way they're using it?
So it's like bringing a third person into your marriage. I actually have a friend who their marriage therapist told them to do that. And he said it was the accelerator on their downward spiral, because now it's no longer an intimate act. It's let's do or watch or see this thing outside of ourselves. And it's like, I think we've lost, like, this maybe will make some people mad, but like the primary purpose of sex, I'm not saying it's not pleasurable or any of that stuff. The primary purpose is actually procreation.
Procreation, right.
So like when we lose sight of the primary reason for something, we start to misuse it. So like
you know, I know we don't want to make it over biblical or anything, but although God did say, yes, use it for procreation, but it was also for you to bond with your partner. And
for sure.
Looking at an image of another person that is not your partner and then getting aroused by that image and trying to then transfer that arousal to your partner, like you're not aroused by him or her. You're by the image you saw. I mean, it's a slippery slope either way, because I do know couples that they swear by looking at porn and then getting it on. Like that's how they do it. And like, is there any downside to that? And you're kind of articulating it here, and I'm reinforcing it of, yeah, because you're kind of looking at someone else to get that intimacy with the other person that's supposed to be the person you're bonding with. How do you bond with a human that's literally right next to you when all you have in your head is that image of the other person that you just saw on the screen?
I think that people who, and I mean, I don't want to sound judgmental when I say this, but I think it's a shortcut. And anywhere there's a shortcut, like when you're looking at porn, you're like manufacturing desire. Yes. And it's like anytime in my life I've had a shortcut, it's always hurt me.
Well, and look at it this way, Joshua. If you have to look at another woman to get aroused, you got to get your priorities straight with this woman you're with.
Yeah. I think women pick up on that too.
One more time.
Women definitely pick up on that too. Like they might not consciously be thinking it because they're actually partaking in that kind of shortcut with you. But I can't see how that doesn't destabilize a relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be anything good. And that's one reason I want to talk about it. And I know this is a very uncomfortable topic to talk about, those watching and everything. But it's something I think we need to say out loud. You know, and it isn't, again, religious, Christian kind of thing of, oh, it's going to rot your brain. It literally, there's science behind that. I know you probably saw when Danny Vega was talking a lot about this, probably like 6-8 months ago. He was posting all about it. And he showed these side-by-side images of a healthy brain and then a brain of someone who watches porn. And you can just see the deterioration in the brain. It's pretty amazing.
That's like there's that website called Fight the New Drug, and it's about pornography. And like what you were talking about when you're younger, it was magazines. And you had to go to a store and you had to have someone look at you and you thought they're judging you and you thought they're like, oh, this kid's a bad kid type thing. But now it's like, it's in your hand.
Nobody will ever know unless they look at your browser history. But look at your browser history, you see a lot of images. I mean, there's still shot images, and there's whole websites you don't have to pay anything for.
Yeah. So it's like that. There's a guy that his whole coaching program is around getting guys free of pornography, and like, yeah, it's he just describes it well, and maybe we can tag him in after, but whatever. So he says, like, when you first start, you're looking at one video, one page. Eventually, guys are now switching. Well, and I shouldn't say just guys, because it's increasingly a problem among women too.
Yes. And
now you have multiple windows open, and you're switching back and forth, and then you're like prolonging, stretching out it says right here, the average visit lasts 6 minutes to these websites. So 6 minutes, 29 seconds. So it's like
up to get the job done, I suppose.
Yeah. So it's like, it's not just, it's progression in like the intensity and the abusiveness of the content, plus how you view the content. And so it's pretty crazy. And like for myself, like going through that Conquer series, one thing that they talked about, and men hate talking about this, is that at the core of every addiction, negative coping mechanism, there's always a wound. And so always. And so for myself, like it sounds kind of silly to say, but I was teased really, really bad in grade 3. And I didn't deal with it well. So like, there's some people who can know how to deal with things better than others. Maybe it's their parents teach them better ways of expressing themselves. I don't know. My mom said that I was a kid that was always yapping, just talk. And then after grade 3, she said I stopped. And so I covered up everything with anger, right? That's what we're good at. We're really good at that. Guys are good at just being angry. So your one emotion becomes anger for everything. And so I had to work through that. One of the biggest things was I had to forgive people. And then after that, I had to forgive myself, because I was the source of my struggle.
Have you experienced the dreaded keto flu? Did you know that most of these symptoms are actually due to your body dumping excess electrolytes? This is where Element comes in. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt with no sugar. Element is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited to folks following a keto, low-carb, or paleo diet. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, with none of the junk, no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. Everyone needs electrolytes, especially those on low-carb diets, or if you practice intermittent or extended fasting, if you're physically active, or sweat a lot. Add Element today and see how much better you feel and perform. Use the URL drinklmnt.com/Jimmy.
I mean, we are driven for very specific things in life, and there's no shame for natural drugs. Like, even though they shame you when you overeat food. even though that's a natural drive to go eat food, the kinds of food, and we're going to make this analogy to sex here in a minute, but the kinds of food matter. Like fat and protein is going to be far more satiating and let you be fulfilled and healthy and strong than all the crappy garbage in the world. Same with this. Pornography is the crappy garbage of your eyes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
fat and protein is a healthy relationship with someone you genuinely love.
Yeah. Yeah. Dave Asprey had a great quote where he said, pornography is the high fructose corn syrup of sex.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that.
It feels good really fast, but then you're like, holy crap, why do I feel like so sick afterward? Yeah, I mean, it's apropos. And look, last year during the pandemic, what happened? Pornhub put out this, hey, we know you're lonely at home. Here, have a month's free of our membership. Did you remember when they did that last year?
I didn't see that, but it doesn't surprise me.
Like they got millions of people to take advantage of that, and then they brought them all on as new subscribers. Yeah, it's.
So did you hear about how American Express and Visa actually pulled their card off of Pornhub's platform a while ago? I can't remember how, maybe it was 2 years ago. The reason was because they couldn't verify the age of the participants in those videos. And so that's the other problem, is that whether you like it or not, you're contributing to the demand for sex trafficking.
Yes, and the exploitation of those women. Because how do you prove it? Like you see the girl, they barely legal or whatever, and it's like, okay, but it looked like maybe 12, 13, 14.
Well, they had.
What's that?
Well, they had to pull off. I think they had like 18. Someone will have to search it and confirm this, but it's like I'm not that far off. They had like 18 million videos, and they had to pull off like 12 million videos.
Wow.
So you can't fool yourself and say this is all consenting adults, because it's not.
Yeah. But look, I think the bigger issue we're talking about here today, that's a horrible whole issue.
Yeah, we don't need to get into that. But it's
here is, even if it is two consenting adults doing this and videotaping it and putting it on the internet and people are watching, that's the problem. It's like, what's drawing them? And I think it comes back to, you need a loving relationship that's open in the communication, where there's no secrets as it relates to your sex life, and have those discussions. Like, I know many marriages, and I started doing a little bit of research on this. It's something like 1 in 4 marriages after the first year of marriage are completely sexless. 1 in 4. Like, that's a huge stat.
That's insane. Roommates. Your roommates.
Build relationships out there. I can only speak from the guy's standpoint. Yeah, no, that would be tough. But even from the girl standpoint, it's something that, let's stop making this shit taboo, guys. Let's talk about it out loud. If we talk about this, it continues to stay a problem. Which is why I'm talking about this very difficult conversation here today with my bud Joshua, because we've all dealt with it. Let's not pretend like it's not a real thing.
Yeah. And like, it's always interesting that after I do some sort of interview like this, I'll have lots of women reaching out to me saying, thank you for talking about this. And no guys reaching out, though.
Look, the shame is real with guys. Like, a guy, I've been jerking off watching naked women on the internet. Like, that's not a fun thing to have to admit to anybody. And yet, in reality, it's real life. You know, and this is why I think trying to cultivate relationships with people, if you're happily married, that means that person you're married to, or if you're single, you should be looking for people that can help you fulfill this need. So you ain't got to look at it, right?
Yeah. So like, the one thing that I also found, this was kind of like really blew my mind too, is the opposite of addiction isn't abstinence, it's connection.
Yes.
And so when people connect with others, whether that's connecting with your significant other in your marriage, that's going to strengthen. It's like, sex is like the glue in a marriage. It keeps you close.
Connection doesn't even have to be a physical act like what we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
I connect with another human being. Look, I've got a lot of really cool friends in my life, like ride or die people that I would go to the ends of the world for. That connection with them, I'm not saying it replaces the sex, but it definitely fills the need for that intimacy and being closer with someone, even if we're not like physically together and we're not boyfriend girlfriend or whatever. Those relationships kind of fill that need where if they weren't there, then those thoughts of negativity would make me kind of go, okay, porn, you're looking really good right
Well, like I would say that if I think this is almost a false dichotomy, but if there's extreme extroverts and introverts, I would be more on the extrovert side. But with that, when I was struggling hard with that issue, I had convinced myself that I didn't really need people. I was kind of acting out the lone wolf type thing. And what happens is you just get deeper into yourself, and you just reinforce these mental loops became so strong in me.
Yeah.
And actually that again, that Conquer series, that one guy that I opened up to, that like broke that cycle, started to establish like there's nothing like I was just so there is like an actual physical addiction side to it, but most of it is just a belief system. What was this problem solving for me? And so I started stacking the pros and cons, because there is some pros, right? They're pros that cost you in the long run, but they're still pros. So like I had to start stacking the scales in my mind and say like, well, I have 3 daughters.
Yes.
Do I want to have to say to them that at one, or have them catch me, or have them look at my computer or my phone one time? Like that, I don't want them to have to. I want to be able to speak from a place of yes, knowledge, I've gone through it, but a place of victory. Because how can I tell them to ask a guy or to look for a guy that isn't addicted to porn, which is becoming increasingly rare, when I'm still addicted to it? That's hypocrisy.
Well, and think about it. Like, here you are being the parent to your daughters and being the husband to your wife, and you get caught. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're literally saying, you guys don't matter. I devalue you in my mind, whether it's conscious or subconscious. When you engage in the porn, you're saying, I devalue all of these women in my life because I've got to look at a fake woman to get my jollies and to take care of whatever needs you have to cover up the trauma or the pain from like third grade we're saying, and other people going through stuff. You're literally taking away from that relationship, which again, breaking this cycle means you got to reconnect. I'm really glad you're kind of bringing that out. What other ways can you talk about that kind of break you from?
So like it's actually a Tony Robbins. It's pain pleasure principle. So basically, with the pros and cons. So I kept on like, so I started convincing myself of the opposite of what I was doing, and like I'm a Christian, so I believe that the Holy Spirit had a big part in this too. And I dug into my Bible and all that stuff at the same time as this. But like, so it's not an intimate act. You're not watching an intimate act. Often they're drunk or high while they're doing the video. There's a script. There's a director. There's a whole bunch of people around. It's not an intimate act. So that was one thing that also, like, strangely enough, that also helped me. Again, I have 3 daughters. I don't want them to ever be involved in something like that. I don't want them to have a guy ever pressuring them to do stuff like that. Their body is their own. No one else has a right to it. We're dealing with that in society in general right now. You have the right to say no. And so I kind of lost sight of your question.
And I think it's admirable that you don't want this to be your legacy with your daughters, and showing them that a real relationship with a man is going to be one where you love each other, care about each other. So the best example you can do that with your daughter is love their mom. Without reservations at all, without having to turn other ways. Now, I do know relationships where it's like that 1 in 4 have no sex life after the first year. It's like, how does resentment not come into play? How does that not them? Look, I'm not getting any. So they justify it in their head of, okay, well, if she's not letting me have it, go find it on my own.
Well, like, again, if you have kids, you have extra motivation, right? But a lot of your kids' confidence comes from the quality of your relationship. So like a lot of people will abandon their relationship and then look after their kids, and their kids will become the primary focus of their marriage. And it's very easy to do, but you're actually doing them a disservice, because you're the one modeling a relationship to them. And if you want them to have good relationships, you need to realize that your relationship is primary. Your kids are secondary. So when you have a strong marriage, a strong bond with your significant other, now you are able to model what a real relationship looks like. So when you have resentment in there, resentment is like just a cancer. It grows and it grows, and it never stays as just resentment. It's always resentment, anger, bitterness, unforgiveness, and it eventually turns into disgust and hatred. And there you go. That's your divorce. and so yeah, it's you were talking about some things. What are some things that could help? There's an acronym that really helped me out, and it comes like part and parcel. You have to shape your environment. So maybe you need to have rules with your phone or your computer. Maybe you need to, like, actually Apple iPhone, you can actually block all adult content in your actual iOS operating system, which is amazing. There's an acronym, it's called HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Anytime you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, you are going to have a really hard time avoiding things that you don't want to partake in. So whatever that is, if that's like you don't want to crush a whole bag of chips in one sitting, which I've done many times in the past, or whatever your issue is, you can substitute it in. It's hungry, angry, lonely, tired. So you shape your environment. You recognize that you have beliefs around why you're doing what you're doing. There's likely a wound. Start to develop that self-awareness. Find yourself a safe person to talk to. Like if I would have told that guy like my deepest, darkest secret, and he would have said, "Man, Josh, you're sure messed up." Man, like maybe I wouldn't have pulled out of it. Like maybe it would have been 5 more years of struggle.
Are you tired of playing the mask game? Me too. That's why I wanted to tell you about the Unmask. This is a breathable, completely breathable. It covers, you can't even see that it's breathable, but it's breathable. Whether you're going on a plane, having to go into a store and wearing this thing, playthemaskgame.com is how you can get this mask. They come in all kinds of colors and everything. In fact, right there, you can see right through it what it is, but when you're wearing it, it does not look like it's anything different, but it's breathable, baby. Playthemaskgame.com.
Look, I mean, addictions will grab you hard. I can talk from firsthand experience how hard sugar was, from going from 1,700 grams of carbs a day to 20 in one day. Like that was intense. That was super hard. But look, hard doesn't mean impossible. Hard doesn't mean not able to. Hard means, all right, you're going to have a tough road. Hang in there. So, and it's not even like you said earlier, you might knuckle yourself to stay away for a period of time, but gravitate back. So breaking that cycle of why you need that, and working on cultivating a relationship more, and finding out like other ways to express your intimacy with people. Like, look, I try and be very intimate in my work. And by design, like I feel like people don't have a lot of intimacy in their life where people care about them and express things that are encouraging. And I like to say, hey, I appreciate you, I love you, keep up the good work, you know, that kind of thing. And that does something in people's brains when you give them that, because most people, they don't get that. And that's what leads them to look for artificial forms of intimacy like porn.
Yeah. And like we're having a conversation right now, which is like, I would consider that to be, we're connecting. But most of social media is a shortcut. Yeah. It's a shortcut, and it becomes, well, it's, social media is like, lots of people are addicted to social media. It's like, it's got that bells and whistles. It's got the, oh, you've got all these likes and you get a little dopamine hit. And I can't remember how many, there's a stat for the average time someone opens their phone in a day. And it's incredible. It's very high. Yeah.
Hundreds of times.
Yeah. And it's like, it's because companies know what gets humans hooked. Like, they know what drives us. And it's like, I'm sure you've read that Michael Moss book, Salt, Sugar, Fat. That one was just incredible to me, how they're actively trying to override willpower. And that is happening in every area of your life, whether it's pornography, whether it's like, you can say a word and the advertisement will pop up for it on your phone. Like,
look, we're sitting here talking about porn. I'm expecting Instagram to give me some kind of ad for porn stories later, because we've said it so much on this episode.
yeah, it'll just be some weird pop-ups.
Swipe.
Yeah. Oh man, when you posted that guy with the laptop advertising this interview, and he's like slamming the laptop shut, I just was howling, because I was like, what person hasn't had that reality where like X.
Well, look at the guy from CNN that got caught on Zoom here watching porn during a session that happened to be videotaped, and he got, what was he, suspended for like a half a year, but they brought him back.
It's like talking about like, yeah. And then like for myself, so part of that spiral is like, you start, I'm kind of diving deep again here, if that's okay.
Please.
Part of that like downward spiral is you don't trust yourself anymore. You don't trust your word to yourself, because you say, hundreds of times I said to myself, this will be the last time.
Yeah.
And your self-confidence plummets, and your ability to think that you can do anything plummets. And like, I'm a pretty, like, on the outside, people would look at me and say, I look like a fairly capable guy. Like, I don't look like I don't have any visible issues, but man, like how much I was in my own head all the time. Someone, like, little comments would set me in like just that mental loop. Someone would say something, and then I would immediately go into fight or flight, and I could not come up with an appropriate response. And then that negative mental loop would just cycle and cycle and cycle. And then it's like you walk away, and for like 2 days, you're like, oh, I wish I would have said this. Oh, I wish I would have said that. And that was all a part of that original wound, where like you, like, fight or flight that easily is not normal.
And I think it's more prevalent than any of us to admit, Joshua. That isn't a rare occurrence. That is very, very, very normal in society.
Yeah.
I think
common, not normal.
Well, I think that's a part of breaking this as well, is recognizing that you're not the only one kind of going through this. Sometimes people feel all alone. There's a reason. I think you sent me that. There's like 80 million people look at this on a regular basis. It's like, that's a significant number.
Yeah. Like 40.
how depraved we are. What?
Well, it's 40 million Americans are regular visitors. So who knows how many irregular visitors there are. The porn industry's annual revenue is more than the NFL, NBA, and MLB all combined.
Well, and look, ad revenue from the pay sites like Pornhub and some others, but there's so much out there, and you get the dopamine hit from that. And then, like, at least OnlyFans has now forbidden pornography now.
I saw that. I was like, that was quite a step, because like
they're going to nosedive in their business. I mean, it literally mocked and made fun of because, oh, you want to see a naked girl live? Go and become an OnlyFan. Girls make a lot of money from it, and whatever. Yeah. But yeah, that's going to be interesting. What happens to all those people used to seeing that image of a live girl? Will they now go over to the porn sites?
So I heard a great quote the other day. It said, I'm going to butcher it, but you will always come to a point where convenience collides with your desire for commitment. And so what we're talking about, everything we've talked about, is all about convenience. It's really convenient to not have to invest in a relationship with someone and just go and have 3 or 4 clicks and be done with it.
Well, and especially if you've been in bad relationships and you're just over
yes, and
having to deal with all that. And even like sex, you know, I'm not trying to make it a heterosexual thing. It's sex pornography as well. So if you're into that, so it's going to be something. Yeah, people need to stop replacing the real thing with this fake and look at it like carbs, guys. Watch my show stuff. You got to look at porn like it's the crappiest of crappy carbs there is, and you need some real whole foods of steak and vegetables and fat. That's a real person. That's someone to have in your life that you can cultivate that relationship with. And look, once you're with them, keep cultivating it, because it's not this done deal of, well, you're together, so therefore you don't have to cultivate it anymore. I think if you can cultivate the relationship, your need for porn and other sources of getting your jollies off won't be as big.
Well, like there's this concept of, like, I think it's Think and Grow Rich, where they talk about how most guys don't see success until they're in their 40s and 50s because they haven't figured out how to make that sexual energy do something productive for them.
Yes.
And it's like, I'm definitely like, and here's the thing I'll say, so people like don't think we're like, I've been 3 years of not looking at porn. So and the interesting thing is that it's not a struggle for me, because I changed those beliefs and that belief system. And so it's like, be, do, have. It's that, I'm sure you've come across that. Like, you got to be the person that does the things to get the results you want. And that all starts with beliefs. And so, like, yeah, it's a process for sure, but like, it's got to start with the beliefs, and you got to be willing to look in and then like feel the pain, basically.
And get it in another way and stop running from the problems. Guys, go check him out. His name is Joshua Brown Wellness over on Instagram. And man, Josh, I knew this was going to be a hard topic, but dude, you handled it like a champ. I'm really proud of you, man.
Hey, guys who are vulnerable have like a whole nother level of strength. The people that are going to put others down for talking about feelings and stuff like that, man, they got a lot of work to do yet. So I'm on that journey, and if I can help one person, it's worth it.
Well, thank you so much for being here today.
All right. Well, thanks for giving me a chance to be on your show.
Keto Chow is a customizable shake mix that is also perfect for cooking and baking. giving you simple, nutritionally perfect meal options. Keto Chow. Make keto easy.
Discover your favorite flavor at jimmylovesketochow.com.